Hello there. My name is Kate Brown Pernia, and I hope you'll bear with me. This is my first ever YouTube video. I've been advised to start before you're ready, and so here I am giving it a try. I'm a milliner, that is a hat maker. I make hats and fascinators mostly because I just love them. And my little YouTube channel is called Why Not a Hat, because I wear a hat every day and I'm constantly asked about my hats. They're great conversation starters. And then when I get into talking to whoever I'm chatting with and they tell me they love hats but they never wear them, I ask them why. And I get a range of excuses. Usually, oh, well, I don't look good in hats, or they don't fit my head. Well, let me tell you a secret. I got into making hats because hats didn't fit my head either. I have a rather large head. I'm what's called a long oval. And so the hats that were available in department stores at the time just wouldn't fit my head. And I got frustrated with it. Then one day, when I was looking through a catalog of classes for the Fashion Institute in New York, I discovered that they offer hat making classes. So I started going to night school. And one thing led to another, and I ended up being a theatrical milliner, doing hats for Kentucky Derby, custom orders, all sorts of things. Anyway, I'm retired now and working here in my home studio, and what I really love doing is teaching people how to make hats. But I also feel like this is an industry that has been kind of dying out in this country for the last 50 years. Let's face it. We don't dress up very much anymore, especially these days. I refuse to live in my pajamas in these pandemic years, months. I know it's months, but it feels like years. Anyway, maybe now that we're resorting to Zoom classes and work and so forth, maybe we should bring back, pretty tops and nice hats. So I thought we would start with just talking about a few different kinds of hats, and you can let me know what sorts of things you are interested in, what kind of hats you like, and why you do or don't wear hats. So let's start off with the one that I'm wearing. This is a little knotted sisal straw hat that is blocked. That is, the straw is wet and shaped over a wooden hat block, which I'll show you later. And then I used a purchased flower that I found at the craft store and just trimmed it up. And it's a lot of fun. And it's held on my head with just a little hat pin, which is here. I have long hair, which is another reason I wear hats, because my hair is hard to manage. So let's look at a couple of other different types of hats. You've heard a lot about fascinators, no doubt. That's this sort of thing, made popular by the royal family. Young ladies will wear these for a wedding or a birthday party or just a night out on the town. This one, because it's white, is probably more suitable for a wedding. It's a little ribbon rose with some crin or horsehair, we call it. Used to be made of horsehair, but now it's not. It's made of polyester. So this is just a little headband with a fancy trim. Lots of possibilities there. I teach classes in how to make these, and I have an 11-year-old student who's made 6. So if she can do it, you can too. Here's another one. As you can see, it's a little green headband, fabric covered, with a little fantasy flower that I made out of wire. This is another possibility. A little fancy, but kind of fun for a night out. Back when, that is, when we can go, when we can go out again. So, here is my most recent well, it's more of a cocktail hat type. But this one is made of straw and a fantasy flower. Where's my hat pin? Misplaced it. Anyway, this is held on the head with a little wire band in the back. And I couldn't find a feather that was correct for this particular hat, so I made one out of fabric. Can you see? I'll get close. So what do you think? Would you get jeered at if you went out wearing something like this? Or would people come up and compliment you and start a conversation? Okay, so that's what we would call a cocktail hat or a percher or a fascinator. This is a little retro kind of hat that was very big in the 1950s. It's what I would call a bandeau. It's a little hat that's formed to the head with a fancy feather trim, and the fabric, it's made out of buckram and velvet. Not my best style for my face, but if you have a fluffier hairdo, these are really nice. As you can see, there's a fancy shirring technique done with the velvet on this, so that's a fun thing to do. Here's one of my favorite hat styles. Very saucy. I've made these for Kentucky Derby clients. This one is made of buckram and covered with silk. And it's I think, a hat that suits me, so I have several versions of this that I like to wear. What would you call this? Kind of a, well, I can't remember what I call it, but anyway, you get the picture. Here's another fancy hat, sort of a wedding creation. This hat is made of a wire frame covered with fancy lace and a beautiful silk orchid. In this case, I purchased the orchid. Some milliners make their own flowers. There are lots of interesting classes online about how to make your own flowers. Galina Koffa teaches how to make silk and leather flowers. I would definitely recommend her classes. So let's see, what else can I show you? Another wire hat. This was in a magazine once upon a time. I'm sorry, my hair is in my face. My ex-husband used to call this my $1,000 hat because it took me a long time to make, but it was a fun process. This one is made of a wire frame covered with tulle and then covered again with lace and homemade ribbon roses. That's a fancy tea party hat, I would say. Let me show you the hat that I wear most often. I'm a gardener. I have a dog that I walk twice a day, and I never go out without a hat on because I'm fair and I'm old. So anyway, this is one of my hat patterns, which is a cloth fabric hat, and it's great fun to wear. I have at least a dozen of these in different fabrics, and this is a great travel hat because you can roll it up and put it in your suitcase and just go. Keep the sun off your face, have a little style. And you know, here's another thing. You don't have to dress up to wear a hat. You can have a plain outfit on, you put a hat on, and it dresses you up automatically. But it doesn't have to be too dressy. This one, for example, is actually made of what they call outdoor fabric that you would buy to make cushions for your outdoor chairs on your deck. Well, it's great because it has a little substance to the fabric, and it also repels some of the elements. So it holds up well, and it's casual. So this is my Marie style. Now, let me see, what else can I show you? Well, you can see I have a lot here, but here are a couple of fun hats. This one is a 1930s shape, often called a doll hat. It's one of my favorites. I've made several variations of this hat. This particular one is sort of a fabric collage, and it's decorated with some mesh that I colored the dots on to match the dots and some of the fabric. Now, another version of that hat here is the same style, but this is made with straw braid with some vintage flowers that my mother found in a thrift shop. But isn't this a fun little hat? It even has a braid in the back to hold it on your head. And because hats have been out of vogue for a long time, a lot of the suppliers have gone out of business. So there are a lot of things that you used to be able to get for making hats that are hard to find now. And one of them is especially straw braids, beautiful straw braids. This is actually made from a placemat that I found in a thrift store. I took the placemat apart so I could use the braid to make the hat. Isn't that a pretty braid? So you see, different materials make the hats look quite different. Here's a fun little hat that I made out I blocked on a bowl. This is a felt hat. Well, it's felt on the inside and it's velvet on the outside with a fancy ribbon trim. Now this is a dressy hat, but the same hat made in a more casual style with a little zipper that opens. This is denim with a zipper that opens to a little tartan fabric. Is kind of a fun little casual version of the same hat. I've actually been picked up on the subway wearing this hat because somebody was so fascinated with it. So, one more fun hat. This is a hat that I saw at a Titanic exhibit. It was inspired by a vintage hat that I saw at the Titanic exhibit. And it's made out of a buckram covered with a beautiful fabric. And then, because I didn't have the proper feathers at the time, I found some wonderful wood chip flowers in the craft store with some other materials that in the flower department, the floral department as they call it. But this is sort of a turn of the last century style, but I think it's very classic and a very pretty fabric. Now, more casual hats. Here's a style that I really like. It's called a trilby, sort of like a fedora, but I think trilby is the British name. And this is one of my patterns. This also is made with home deck fabric for your deck. And then I appliqued fabric flowers from another fabric on this. And I also have this in recycled denim, which I didn't bring up today, so I'll have to show you another time. But this is a favorite style, and I think it's very flattering for a lot of people, and very casual. So you don't have to be going to a dress-up affair. You can just be walking the dog wearing this hat. But it's a great conversation starter. One more casual hat that I wear very frequently is one of my favorites. I took a class from Rosemary Eichhorn in the art of fabric collage, and she taught us how to do fabric collage. And so I made a vest and then had to make a hat to go with it. So this is a fabric hat done with fabric collage, lots of different little quilting cotton fabrics. Again, very pretty hat, very casual, but also because the crown is soft, you can just flatten it and stick it in your suitcase and go with it. One more before I end, and this is a knotted sisal. This one's kind of a fancy hat, but it's a fun hat. And it's a straw, a knotted sisal straw. I'm just sticking the pin through my hairdo here to hold this on my head. It's got a little thing in the back to hold it on my head, and a nice little wired edge trim. I got stopped in a museum wearing this hat one day. Somebody wanted to photograph me because they loved the hat. So you see, you can have a lot of fun with it. And let's find out why more people aren't wearing hats. And thanks for visiting. This was a very rough first try, but I appreciate your coming to visit. And if you like it, please click subscribe and like me, and we'll try to do some more. I hope to do some lessons in how to make some of these cuties. So thanks for coming.